Sometimes it's hard to find a jihad rhyme, but jihadis always seem to find the time to maim and kill and commit other crime. But David Wood is with us tonight. He's always sharp. He's always bright. And on the jihad, he'll shed some light. That one goes out to the person who left a comment saying, "You're running out of jihad rhymes." That was the running out of jihad rhymes rhyme. Now, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to This Week in Jihad. And we have with us the great, the one, the only, the David, the Wood. David, welcome.
Yes, and I just want to say I challenge every jihadi out there to compose poems greater than the poems that Robert Spencer starts off his live streams with. And if you can't equal them, then you have to admit that Robert Spencer is the final prophet who supersedes everything Muhammad said. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to be the judge of the contest. You know how you guys do that? You challenge everyone else to write something like the Quran, and then you guys are somehow the judges of the contest. So anyway, I'm going to be the judge.
So let's see it, folks. A jihad poem like it. All right. We have here a lot of jihad this week. And
a lot of jihad. I haven't heard about any of it in the news. What are you talking about?
You haven't heard about any of it, David?
I haven't heard of any jihad this week. What are you talking about?
There has been more jihad this week. And I only went back 1 week. We were here 2 weeks ago. I apologize yet again for missing last week. It was unavoidable. But the fact is that even just going back to a week ago, there is an unusually large amount of jihad. Shall we start with the violence?
That's a good place to start when you're dealing with jihad.
There's a whole lot more. There's a lot of stupid infidels. There's a lot this week, David. All right, so we have in Cyprus, let's start off with a little known story. Member of the Cyprus National Guard was set upon by 10 Muslim recent arrivals, asylum seekers to Cyprus, who kidnapped him, beat him, videoed it, and posted the video on social media. They were still so confident that they would face no consequences that they put up their video bragging about kidnapping and beating this teenage member of the Cyprus National Guard. What could account for this confidence, David?
I don't know. They pay attention.
That's right. They pay attention to how supine the European authorities are. And so they went ahead and figured there would be no consequences. But as it happened, they ended up with some Cypriots who've had enough. And so they are facing charges, and there's being perhaps even an evaluation of the entire migrant enterprise, but that remains to be seen. Okay. Yes, sir.
Oh, nope. Go ahead.
Well, let's go over to the Palestinians. Always charming, always winsome. And we have the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, which is part of Fatah. Fatah is part of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which is the party of the Palestinian Authority President, Mahmoud Abbas. And
wait, they're the Al-Aqsa, what?
Martyrs Brigade.
What are they even talking about? They've got Al-Aqsa.
Yeah, but they're going to fight to keep it because they always say the Jews are going to destroy Al-Aqsa and rebuild their temple that they never had anyway.
Isn't this funny? Because I mean, I get that there are arguments and ongoing conflict, and yeah, I'd be pretty ticked off too if one group was way more powerful than I was and so on. But I mean, couldn't Israel take that in like 2 seconds if they actually decided to take it?
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah, they could walk right up there and take it.
I mean, as a matter of fact, they did take it in 1967. Because from 1948 to 67, the Temple Mount was under the control of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. But Jordan joined the war against Israel, the Six-Day War in 1967, in which the Arab Muslim countries lost decisively and the Jews took control of all of Jerusalem. Now, it's interesting to note, in contradistinction to the terrible rhetoric about how terrible and oppressive the Israelis are, the Israelis actually, after they took control of Jerusalem, forbade the Jews from going up to the Temple Mount to pray. They can go up, but only certain times, certain hours during the day, several days a week, whereas Muslims can go and pray anytime they want on the Temple Mount. And so this is an indication of how terribly oppressive the Israelis are. But anyway, the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade has issued a call. And the call started, oddly enough, with a quote from the Quran, chapter 8, verse 17. This is relating to the Battle of Badr. And you did not kill them, but it was Allah who killed them. And you did not throw. There's a story about Muhammad throwing some rocks toward the Quraysh in the Battle of Badr. You did not throw, O Muhammad. The O Muhammad's an interpolation. It's not in the Quran. You did not throw, but when you threw, it was Allah who threw, that he might test the believers. And then the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade adds to that, O heroes of the West Bank, stab. O heroes of Hebron, run them over. O heroes of Jenin, bomb. O heroes of Jerusalem, this land is your land. A little quote from Woody Guthrie there to go along with the quote from the Quran. What are you waiting for? The time has come to kill the Jews.
Haven't they been trying that one for a while now?
Well, one would think, yeah. We thought that for the Palestinians, the time had come to kill the Jews quite a long time ago. But now they apparently are stepping up the rhetoric, which always precedes stepping up the actual violence. So we're likely to see more from them in the near future. This is because they're flush with funding now. After the Trump administration cut them off, the Biden administration has renewed the showering of billions upon them. And so they're using it to say, time has come to kill the Jews.
Isn't that I can understand their frustration, right? Like, there are almost 2 billion Muslims in the world right now. You've got, I don't remember the number. What is it, like 18 million Jews in the world? And so you got a certain number of people, you only have a certain number of them in Israel. But I mean, wouldn't it suck if like you're told, hey, you don't get your virgins until you go slaughter all these guys. You're like, we got 2 billion. They only got a few million. So this is going to be easy. And they like massively crush you every time. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, you'd think that they would start to reconsider their theology, but no such luck, not yet. Okay, let us go to Germany. Germany is always good for some jihad, David.
And bratwurst.
Yeah, bratwurst and jihad. And then we will go to the beer garden. I tell you, I spoke in Germany like 10 years ago, and it was always a lunch engagement. And I was wondering, why did you set all these up that I would speak at lunch? There was never an evening engagement. I didn't understand it. And finally, after a couple days, it dawned on me, because we would have the lunch event, and then they would say, and now we will go to the beer garden. And we'd just go and drink beers for the rest of the afternoon. And I realized this is probably just how they structure everything in Germany. But anyway, Germany is now coming in for a massive restructuring, and the beer gardens may be threatened in their business. The German newspaper Bild, they reported that the Christopher Street Day parade in the city of Halle, Christopher Street Day being a pro-homosexual parade, several people were attacked by, and Bild calls them, a brutal group of thugs. And the victims suffered serious injuries. The brutal group of thugs was further described as people of a southern appearance. Do you think they were from Mississippi, David?
Southern?
A southern appearance. They was over there in Germany. They thought they'd break up that Christopher Street Day parade.
Yeah. Oh.
I just don't think that's the Southern they mean.
Get her done, little doggy.
Actually, they arrested 2 Afghans. One age 16 and the other 20. And so this is the glorious multicultural future that they are stepping into, where their leftist libertinism is going to run straight up against the mass numbers of Muslim migrants they have brought into the country.
Hey, those leftist libertines need to equip themselves with some Quran and Hadith passages. So, for instance, if they want to roll with one of their, events or parades or something like that, they need to have this one handy from Sunan Abu Dawud, 5224. Abdur Rahman, quoting Usaid bin Hudayr, a man of the Ansar, said that while he was given to jesting and was talking to the people and making them laugh, the Prophet poked him under the ribs with a stick. The man said, "Let me take retaliation." Muhammad said, "Take retaliation. You take that retaliation." He said, "You are wearing a shirt, but I am not." So this guy's sitting around butt naked in front of Muhammad. The prophet then raised his shirt, and the man embraced him and began to kiss his side. Then he said, "This is what I wanted, Messenger of Allah." So Muhammad actually pulls up his dress and lets this guy smooch him all up and down his side. I'd have that in my hand. I'd print those up on cards and I'd be passing those out. Be like, "Hey, your prophet would be right here with us at this event. Some dude having all us dudes smooch him all over his milky white flesh."
I do wonder if he was wearing Aisha's dress when that happened.
Yeah, he walked around, he pranced around in his child bride's nightie. We've got these passages about him sucking on little boys' tongues. And Muslims always try to defend it. They actually say that Muhammad's spit had miraculous properties. So when he was sucking on little boys' tongues, it was to actually feed them, and the boys their bellies would be full after Muhammad would suck on their tongues for a little while.
Well, that actually the same passages are used in India, where there have been lots of videos lately of Muslims preparing food and spitting in it. And the defense is the hadiths where Muhammad spits in food and everybody eats it because, of course, his saliva has miraculous properties.
Yeah, I mean, imagine someone using that defense in court. Like, you catch him sucking on some little boy's tongue. Like, "Hey, what are you doing sucking on that little boy's tongue?" Like, my spit is miraculous. Like, what? Are you serious?
Yeah, quite
Welcome
a gig.
to Islam.
It's a nice gig if you can get it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got serious jihad here, David. It's been a rough week. In Pakistan, interesting revelation about a story we covered earlier, the Jaranwala riots, where numerous churches and homes of Christians were destroyed by angry Muslims over an allegation of blasphemy that was ridiculous on its face, because the supposedly desecrated pages of the Quran were written on with the perpetrator's name and address.
Yeah. Is everyone getting their minds? Is everyone getting their minds around that? So they find this desecrated Quran, and if you have a problem, hi, I'm a Christian. I'm over here. Here's my full name and address, and here's where I live. In case you want to come get me, and they go, "Oh, we'll show him for leaving us his name and address." Isn't that crazy? Like, I had a little experience of that in prison. I had a bunkmate once, and he starts screaming at the guard. He starts screaming out our cell at the guard, telling the guard that he's gonna smack him in the face. He's gonna do all this stuff to the guard, and shouting, "Hey, if you want to do something about it, come on down here and do something about it." And then all of a sudden, after hurling all these insults and abuse at this guard, challenging to come down and fight, he yells, "And if you got a problem with this is B24 bottom D Wood." And so he yells my name. And so I'm like, gosh, I hope this guard doesn't come down here and stomp me into the ground with like 20 of these dudes. But Yeah, fortunately, the guard is smart enough to realize, oh, some guy's yelling down here and saying what his name and bunk number is. It's probably not really him. It's probably some other guy joking. But the Pakistani mobs just aren't all that bright.
Yes. Although, under international pressure, the Pakistani police have now had to admit that the whole thing was based on false accusations, and they have
Shocker.
actually arrested a couple of Muslims. A gentleman named Pervez Kodu, and he thought that one of the Christians, Raja Amir, was having an affair with his wife, and so he wanted a mob to come and beat this guy to a pulp. And so he actually tore the pages of the Quran himself and strewn them around Raja Amir's house.
But by the way, Robert, so the Pakistani version of Scotland Yard got together, assembled their crew. They got Sherlock Holmes, Father Brown, Miss Marple. They rolled everyone up and they brought them over there and got them on the case. And then they figured out that this was that the Christians were actually framed. How long did it take us to figure out that this was that the Christians had been framed? Like 2 seconds?
Yeah, 1.5, 2.
Well, 1.5, 2.
Yeah. Anyway, what can you do?
I mean, it's just crazy. It's like the mob burned down what, like 21? You said what 21 churches
Yeah.
or something like that?
I
And then,
believe it was. And many,
then
many houses.
hundreds of homes, and all just because some loser. I don't know. It's just crazy. You figure the mob would learn at some point, like, hey, every time we go into an uproar and start slaughtering people and burning stuff to the ground, turns out to be fake. Maybe next time we shall insist on some investigation prior to forming our mob, but no such luck, apparently.
Indeed. Okay, over in Indonesia, there was a church service going on recently, and suddenly the windows started to break in the church. And it turned out that there was a Muslim woman outside who was breaking the windows of the church, Bethel Indonesia Church, in Jalan Banuaran, Nan 20 Village, Lubak Begalung Subdistrict in Padang.
Say that 5 times fast.
Anyway, then the woman's husband walks into the church. He's got a machete. And he says, if you don't stop this worship, I will slit your throats. Where does he get that idea?
What, strike at their necks? I don't know.
Yeah. I'll tell you right now, David, it was chapter 47, verse 4 of the Quran, as well as chapter 8, verse 12. And I'm saying this per request. There were several requests. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we did not give chapter and verse, and several people were saying, hey, you got to give chapter and verse, man. So see, it's funny, I do this stuff all the time. I think everybody knows 47:4 now. Mm-hmm. I could walk out on the street and say, hey, what's the behead them verse? And people would say, oh, it's 47:4, of course. But actually, there's still people who don't know. So anyway, yes, the Quran says, when you meet the unbelievers, strike the necks.
We can actually do better than just quoting chapter and verse, because we have Muhammad Hijab's commentary on those verses when Muhammad Hijab was addressing some Quran only Muslims who said that they can know everything they need to know just from the Quran. Muhammad Hijab pointed out that the word for striking your wife there is the same for striking at the necks of the unbelievers. So he said, without the hadith to clarify some limits on how much you can attack and how much violence you could do to your wife, without the hadith for clarification. Side note, according to the hadith, you could beat your wife until her skin turns green. But without even that kind of limitation, Hijab pointed out that, if you're just reading the Quran, you'd think that you could chop your wife's head off for disobedience. And so pretty rough, considering the Quran brags over and over again about how clear it is. And according to Muhammad Hijab, it's like the least clear book in the universe.
Uh-oh, is Muhammad Hijab a hypocrite?
No, it's just I don't know I don't even know what to do when Allah constantly brags about how clear his revelations are, and then his followers come along and say, no, without all these other sources that come along centuries later, you can't understand what's in there. And it's like, oh, okay, so if I just have the Quran, if I convert to Islam and I'm in an area and all I have to go on is the Quran, according to Muhammad Hijab, you'd become a severe type of pedophile because his words, he said a severe form of pedophilia because you would assume that you can have sex with a 5-year-old. You don't have to wait until 9. That's you get things like that from the Hadith. But yeah, and then of course you would conclude that if your little 5-year-old bride is disobedient, you could chop her head off. Great. And this is Allah's eternal speech. This is like Allah had all eternity to get it exactly the way he wants it. And the exact way he wants it is for someone to look at it and go, I could saw my 5-year-old child bride's head off because she messed up my falafel.
Yeah, I've got some stories like that. Let's see. I think the most egregious one is about Sarah Sharif. Now, the Sarah Sharif story has been going on for quite some time. This is Sarah Sharif. There she is, a little girl in the UK. And she was murdered by her family. It seems as if her father, Irfan Sharif, was the chief perpetrator. And it's not clear why she was killed. She was 10 years old. But what's noteworthy about it is that after she was killed, their lawyer of the family told the father and the stepmother that they ought to get out of Britain because they were going to be mistreated for being Muslims since their daughter was missing at that time and later found dead. And so they actually fled the UK and are still in Pakistan beyond the reach of UK law because this lawyer told them that they were going to be mistreated for being Muslims. Now, it's interesting to think about the whole Islamophobia phenomenon in this light, that they're talking about people who actually killed their daughter. Now, why would they do such a thing, David? That's surely they must be extremists who are misunderstanding Islam.
Yeah, I don't know the details, what details there are, and so on. But I mean, you have, even according to the Quran, that if someone is going to be a rebellious child, that it's a good idea to kill them before they grow up and rebel against their parents. And then you have this long tradition of honor killings. You can have other groups that have committed honor killings and so on, but there's a reason the vast majority of them come from Islamic countries. But yeah, they I mean, it's hard to think of applying rules about killing apostates and so on to little girls, but it's kind of the reason the practice has thrived under Islam. So honor killings predated Islam and so on, but it really found lots of support in Islamic ideas about killing apostates, killing heretics, hypocrites, and so on. I mean, the Quran commands Muslims to wage jihad, not only against unbelievers, but also against hypocrites. And then Muhammad and Sunan ibn Majah said, carry out Allah's penalties even against your own family members. So you would hope that people would, see an 8-year-old and say, okay, this is not time to be applying these penalties and so on. But culturally, they just do it and call it honor killing.
Indeed. Another story out of Britain. This is Ramazan Mukhalazi. I got that right. Ramazan.
No, it's not. That's Lil Wayne.
It's Ramazan Mukhalazi. And Ramazan Mukhalazi was actually deported 15 years ago from Britain for a vicious attack on a 21-year-old, a rape when she was on a night out in 2008. And Ramazan Mukhalazi was deported from Britain. The only problem is he did not leave. He stuck around. And he just brutally beat and raped a 66-year-old woman, also there in London. And now he has been sentenced to life in prison. But you got to wonder, maybe if he had been deported when he was first ordered to be deported, that this would not have happened. But why on earth? What's with the rape, David?
Oh, that's that was one of Muhammad's big selling points for the religion. Um, Lots of, Muslims who haven't read their sources have these fantasies that Muhammad came along and he started preaching monotheism and he had won all these converts. He won very few converts just going around preaching Islam. It wasn't until his message changed to, hey, if you join me, and we go out and fight, either one of two things happens. You either get killed and you go to paradise and spend eternity deflowering virgins, or we win and you get to take home the guys we defeat. You get to take home their wives and daughters as your sex slaves. And so it's just built into their thinking. But wait a minute, Robert, this is the UK?
Yes, sir.
Wait a second. The same country that won't let you in. Weren't you going there to lay flowers on Lee Rigby's grave or something like that?
That is correct.
After he was brutally murdered in broad daylight. And then the guys stopped to do interviews and stuff like this about how they just brutally murdered this guy in front of everyone as they sat there watching. You were going to go there. No, you're too extreme. But Mr. already raped someone. He's good. He's okay.
Yep. And it's not just in Britain either. This is Umar Ndiaye or something like that. And Umar is in France. Umar Ndiaye. Yeah, that seems to be his name. His nickname is the Monster of Cherbourg. And there he is, Umar Ndiaye. Kind of, when I put it over there, it looks like you're doing the show with him.
Hey, Umar!
Yes, I will kill you. Anyway, Umar Ndiaye, he raped a woman so brutally that she was in a coma for over a month. Actually, she's still in the coma. And the details are in the news story. It was a very brutal rape. I'm not going to read all this. It's just sickening. And he never expressed any empathy or remorse. And her father now, the victim's father, has now criticized the French government for not saying or doing anything about Umar Ndiaye. And as a matter of fact, the Secretary General of the Socialist Party, Olivier Faure, it was another guy. Hold on. Can't find him now. Leftist. Oh yeah, a politician, Damien Rieu, R-I-E-U. He actually criticized the father for pointing out the guy's name and saying, "Why do you keep calling him Umar?" Well, that's because that's his name. But Damien Rieu, being a leftist politician in France, was saying, "See, this is racist. You're just being racist." And the rapist's name could just as well be Francois or something. So why you keep calling him Umar? Well, his name is Umar. And is there any connection, possibly, David, between his name being Umar and the act in question? I think we've already covered that, but you could perhaps give us a little reiteration.
Yeah, so it's pretty standard. If the prophet of your religion is a child molesting, murdering rapist, you're probably not going to have much of a problem with raping people, especially when the Quran calls unbelievers the worst of creatures. Allah has no love for unbelievers. I mean, so notice it's who cares? Whoever cares about these other people, and you can treat them however you want. But if it's any consolation to the victims of these vicious, violent rapes that keep happening. It's a small price to pay for diversity.
Yes, we had a lot more diversity this past week. David, on Wizz Air. Wizz Air is a Hungarian budget airplane. Wizz Air. And and it was flying from Tel Aviv to London. And there was a guy on the plane who was walking, pacing back and forth from the front of the plane, right outside the cockpit, all the way to the back, and then back again, which aroused a little bit of suspicion. Then he attacked one of the crew members, and he started screaming, "Can't we all just get along?"
Of course.
No, he didn't actually. What do you... I know. I don't even want to ask. We all know what he was screaming, ladies and gentlemen, just in case this is the first time you've ever...
I can break out the wheel again.
Oh, the wheel. We haven't seen that for a while.
Let's see what happens.
Okay.
Allahu Akbar 1.
Yep, looks like that's what he was screaming. And he tried to open one of the emergency exits on the plane, which would have, of course, possibly killed some people, gotten them sucked out of the plane, possibly downed the whole plane, killed everybody. What did the police say, David, when they were asked why he did this?
Keep in mind, I'm not familiar with this at all, but I'm going to go, they're trying to figure out a motive.
That is correct. For $100.
It's always the guys who are yelling Allahu Akbar that have this mysterious unknown motive. Side note: when you're talking about the Wizz Air and you're talking about this guy walking around, I thought you were about to say this guy started taking a whiz on people, but
well, you never know with these guys.
Yeah, it could be anything. Yeah, they're unpredictable.
Indeed. But he was actually tackled to the ground by a Wizz Air passenger and held there throughout the rest of the flight. But despite the Allahu Akbar, officials have no idea why he would do such a thing. None.
Well, it's actually good that someone stood up. You see all these situations where a woman gets attacked on the subway and people just sit around nowadays and don't want to do anything.
That's true.
Someone's messing around trying to bring a plane down. You beat his face in real quick, like. Anyone out there is taking a little jujitsu, maybe a little wrestling or something like that? It's a good time to get a little practice in.
Yeah, it was this guy. We should give him his props here. Victor Troboloni, an Albanian who was on his way to visit his ailing mother in London.
See that? An Albanian.
An Albanian.
He hadn't been forcibly westernized yet.
Indeed.
He still comes from a time when someone's trying to bring this plane down and assaulting the flight attendants. Maybe I should actually do something instead of sitting around watching.
Indeed.
But notice, Robert, people seem to get the idea, like that dude, and any sane person is going to read that. Yeah, this guy wants to bring this plane down. He's shouting Allahu Akbar. Someone needs to snatch him up and do something about it. But we try to deal with the ideology before it gets to that point, and we're the bad guys. Shame on us. Shame on us for trying to deal with the ideology so that you don't have the guy trying to bring the plane down.
We are very bad guys, David.
Shame on us.
Yeah, it's incredible. I find it astonishing. Twitter had a little bit of a break there where they were allowing freedom of speech, but now they're bringing the restrictions back in accord with the hate group listings of groups like the ADL, and then Elon Musk goes to war with the ADL, and yet he's still implementing their stuff. I don't get it. But Elon, if you're listening, if you're watching the show, give me a call.
By the way, I'm not too familiar with it. Is that one of those groups that, like the American Civil Liberties Union and like the Southern Poverty Law Center, at one point was doing good work and then just became like massively dominated by, political extremists of one variety?
Yes, sir. That's exactly the case.
It doesn't seem like that happens every single time.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there was a concerted effort to capture organizations of that kind in order to implement a censorship agenda, and it's worked out great.
It's pretty brilliant, right? You get a group that like again, like Southern Poverty Law Center. They started like suing the KKK and
Hmm.
actually like they're putting the KKK out of business by endless lawsuits and stuff like this. And people get in their mind, oh look, they're doing cool work. Let's go
Yeah,
take it over. Let's go take it over and use it against anyone we disagree with, and we'll start doing the same thing to anyone who disagrees with us about any opinion.
I've been relentlessly smeared and defamed by the Southern Poverty Law Center and deplatformed all over the place as a result. And I can reveal now that I used to be a donor to the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Wow! Wait a minute. The irony. You
Yes,
fed you fed the crocodile that came for you first.
it was way back in the 80s. I had no idea I would ever end up on one of their lists.
Hey,
Anyway, yes, sir.
this total side note, but it was so hilarious that I'm gonna share it real quick. I know an Arab Christian pastor who goes to mosques and gets into discussions with Muslims as they come out. He doesn't go in; he waits for them, outside, and then has discussions with them coming outside. And, he was out there one day, and uh, sort of angry Muslim came out of the mosque and started yelling about pedophile priests. And the Arab pastor said, "Oh, if you have, Christianity condemns that, but if you want to talk about pedophiles, wait right here." He had Sahih al-Bukhari in his van. He went and grabbed Sahih al-Bukhari and he went and showed him a passage about Muhammad and Aisha. He said, "So, your prophet is a pedophile." And the guy punched him right in the face. Boom! Hit him right in the mouth. He still has a scar. He still has a scar on his lip from where he got punched in the face. Anyway, this Arab Christian pastor went to police to tell them, "Hey, you need to let these guys know they can't be assaulting people and so on." Police refused to do anything about it. It's like, "Hey, you're out there, in front of a mosque. What do you expect to happen?" So he goes to the ACLU. This is the hilarious part. He goes to the ACLU and goes in there and says, "Hello, as you can see, I am an Arab. One day I was standing out in front of the mosque reading the Hadith when a man came up to me and punched me in my face."
Oh, that's very clever.
Yes, he said, "I'm Arab. I'm in front of the mosque reading from the Hadith, and a man comes up and punched me in my face. And I went to police, and they refused to do anything about it." And he said the ACLU was like, "What? They're not protecting you? Oh, we'll get to the bottom of this." So they got on the case until they found out that he's actually an Arab Christian, and then he said they didn't want anything to do with it and just let it slide. So anyway, that's the police and the ACLU for you.
Oh, yeah. Hey, David, did you know that they have water parks, water slides in the Islamic Republic of Iran?
Really?
I didn't know this. I was fascinated. It's a shame because I found this out. I mean, who would have thought that in the Islamic Republic of Iran you could even have such a thing where people are sliding down in the water? It would seem like just inviting immodesty of the kind that the Sharia regime there wouldn't want. But anyway, evidently they did have this one water park, the Mojhaye Kurashan Water Park, but it was closed down this past week, I'm sorry to report, because they were letting in girls without hijabs. And so, because it was a major operation apparently, because now 1,000 people are out of work because this water park has been closed. But
Well,
the hijab,
at
yes.
least they just shut the water park down. I was hoping you weren't gonna say something like, then they had executioners wait at the bottom of the slide, and if you made it down, you didn't have a burkini on, they were just going to chop your head off at the bottom.
I wouldn't be surprised by that. The Islamic Republic has made it abundantly clear that they are operating on the basis of the Quranic directive, chapter 8, verse 60, folks, to strike terror in the enemies of Allah. And they're just going to terrorize their dissidents into submission But all
Well,
they
it's
did
good.
was close the water park.
Well, it's good. It'll be good to see this government fall. Hey, wait a minute! Did we just hand them billions of dollars?
Yes,
Oh
$6 billion for 6 hostages. That's $1 billion a hostage for you math experts out there. And it's only going to encourage more hostage taking because obviously if you can get $1 billion for each one, then
Yeah,
it's an easy way to enrich your,
guys.
to strengthen your economy.
If you tell me I'll get $1 billion for taking Robert Spencer hostage, I will take you. I will take you hostage, Robert. It doesn't even have to be a billion, like 500,000. I'll do it. I'll do it right now.
I'll
I
bet
notice that's the first thing that pops into my mind. Oh, I need to get in the hostage taking business if
I
it's that
wonder if the
it's
Islamic
that
Republic would
lucrative.
pay. If you told the Islamic Republic that you had me and would hand me over, I
I
wonder how
used to
much they'd pay you.
I used to think like that when there was like a $55 million hit out on Zachariah Boutros, and I was like, man, that could fund a lot of ministries, man.
Okay. Germany, another story, stupid infidel story out of Germany. There's just no end of stupid infidel stories out of Deutschland. You would think that the people who once styled themselves to be the master race would have more sense, but in any case, maybe, of course, calling themselves the master race showed they didn't have the sense to start with. Polygamy is illegal in Germany, David.
Not for long.
That's correct. And it's already started cracking. 2 cases from Afghanistan. Second wives have been allowed to be brought over in the name of family unification. And so now we have a situation where polygamy is illegal in Germany if you're a non-Muslim, but if you're a Muslim, from Afghanistan at least, then it's fine. I don't know if that situation can be sustained.
Well, notice if you want multiple wives, just go to some other country, marry a bunch of wives, and say, "Hey, I need to unite my family," and come back home.
Oh, yeah, this is good, yeah. You bring them all over. We will pay them the welfare.
Yeah, that goes back. Gosh, it was probably 10 years ago. I was reading an article about the difference between polygamy in Muslim countries and polygamy in European countries, and it was saying in most Muslim countries, it tends to be wealthy people who can afford multiple wives because other people can't, because you're supposed to have separate homes for them and so on, and so it's hard to do. They said, but it's understood in Muslim countries if you can just get to Europe, getting multiple wives is much easier because they're not officially your wives that you're marrying. You do the ceremony in the mosque, so you have your 3 or 4 wives. You might have one wife who's recognized by the government, but your other wives are just, the ceremonies are just done there in the mosque. And then, so officially on paper, these are single mothers, and so they receive state benefits and so on. So all your extra houses are all paid for by the government. So it's understood. Hey, in my own country, I can't even hope to have 3 or 4 wives. But if I can just get over there, the government will pay for it all.
Yep. Same thing happening in the United States, as a matter of fact.
Oh, I've met people. I've met
Mm-hmm.
women who became the second or third wives of Muslim men over here.
Do you remember a few years back in the Bronx, there was a house fire and a whole family was killed, and then it came out that it was a brownstone, and on the second floor lived wife number 1, and on the third floor lived wife number 2, and on the fourth floor was wife number 3, and the husband was on the ground floor, and he would just spend different nights with the different women. And it all came out with the fire, but it was the same kind of arrangement you were just talking about, where only one of them was legally married to him, and so the law looked the other way.
Nice.
Also, Siraj ibn Wahhaj. You remember Siraj ibn Wahhaj from a few years back? Siraj Wahhaj's son. Siraj Wahhaj, of course, for those of you who might just be joining the program, he is a very prominent Muslim preacher in the United States. If there's a Muslim conference somewhere, it's very common you'll see Siraj Wahhaj speaking, although he's getting up in years now. And his son, Siraj ibn Wahaj, which is like Siraj Wahaj Jr., he was, excuse me, arrested a few years back in New Mexico for running a jihad training camp for children. He was going to have children go into primary schools and shoot the place up. And he was there with his second wife while his first wife was living in Florida. And that was all known to the authorities, but they had looked the other way regarding the marriages.
It's actually worse than you know, Robert. We've had there was a podcast with Ali Dawa and Muhammad Hijab, and they had several women lined up, and they were talking about how Muslim men are being forced to have secret second wives because their first wives don't want them to get married a second time, and so but the men still want the second wives, and so they just keep their second wives a secret. And so the show is meant to convince young Muslim women living in the UK, living in the West, to stop being so selfish and let your husbands marry second, third, fourth wives. But notice, I mean, they're openly promoting polygamy on YouTube, openly advocating this. And notice they're not saying, yeah, get a second, third, fourth wife officially in front of the government. They're just saying, yes, this is what we do. We go get our second, third, fourth wives in the mosques. So I don't know. It's amazing. You can they're openly saying this is what they're doing, and it's all totally fine.
Yeah, it's incredible because if some non-Muslim group, the Mormons, for example, who after all were the occasion for the outlawing of polygamy in the United States, if you had open preaching of polygamy among the Mormons, the feds would crack down. But on Muslims, no, not in the UK with Ali Dawa and Muhammad Hijab, and not in the United States either. Okay, terrible story out of Nigeria we should not pass by. This is Naim Danlami, who was a seminarian at a Catholic seminary, can't find the name of it, in Nigeria, and the Fulani Jihad terrorists stormed the seminary intending to kidnap people. Why would they want to kidnap people, David?
Well, if it's men, you hold them for ransom, and if we know what happens to the women, because we've seen that over and over again.
Indeed. And we see now with the hostage payment from the United States to Iran that kidnapping the men can be quite lucrative. But this one went wrong, and Naam Danlami was killed, and the seminary burnt down. This is all part of the ongoing jihad in Nigeria, where the jihadis are especially aggressive right now and gaining all over West Africa. There's a story out of Burkina Faso, right next door. Jihadis kill 53 members of the government security forces. And then in Mali, right there also, where's the Mali story? Muslims killed 49 civilians and 15 soldiers in separate jihad attacks. And so it's clear in Nigeria, in Mali, and Burkina Faso, the governments are not as strong as the jihad groups. The governments either cannot or will not stop them.
And we've talked about this many times before, that, here in the U.S., we tend to think that, everything stands or falls with what the U.S. does and so on. But if you're looking at the actual expansion of Islam, you have, Muslims who come to the West and so on. But as far as like the domain that is under Islamic control, that is expanding. And the sort of dividing line right now as it expands westward is in Africa. And so you have kind of, lines like going through Nigeria and so on, where it's Muslims on one side and predominantly Christians on the other. And the jihadis want to keep pushing that line, keep pushing it farther west and farther south. And people, news agencies don't even report on this stuff. And if nothing happens, then 10 years, that line's going to be in a totally different place. 20 years, it's going to be in a completely different place. And the goal is to just push all the way down through Africa.
It's important to note that this is how the Islamic world was created. As you noted, Muhammad attracted very few followers, and that has held true throughout the history of Islam. Of course, there are people in the West today and people all over the world who've converted to Islam because they actually think that it's true or attractive in some way. But the vast majority of people converted to Islam over the centuries because of the deprivations of not converting, of the second-class status for the non-Muslims in Islamic societies, and relentless attacks like what we're seeing now in Nigeria and its environs. And that was how the Islamic world that we think of today was created. Those were all majority Christian lands in the Middle East and North Africa. But then there were raids and kidnappings and killings and the subjugation of the non-believers, and on and on and on over 14 centuries until the areas of North Africa are 99% Muslim. And Egypt is 90% Muslim when it was almost completely Christian.
So they're thinking long term, and
Indeed.
they
And
are,
nobody is in the West.
yeah.
Here's an interesting instance, actually, of people not thinking in the long term. Again, out of Germany. Germany, like the other countries in Europe, has made a concerted effort to bring people back who left to join ISIS. And so they brought this woman back, a 34-year-old woman from Salzgitter. And she got back to Germany. Marcia is her name, so I suspect she's a convert to Islam. And she manufactured explosive belts and recruited wives as potential assassins to carry out a jihad attack at a festival near her area in Hildesheim. And so they brought her back out of humanitarian concerns, David. They figured, well, you know, these women, they're in these camps, the Al-Hol camp in Syria and others, and it's terrible. They are German citizens. We must bring them back, yeah? And then they come back and plot a jihad attack.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? I mean, people immigrate to Western nations, then, you know, they preach and they have kids, and some people convert and so on. And then there's a call to join ISIS, and they go down and join ISIS, and then ISIS loses. And then, I don't know, people then go back to the UK and Canada and Germany and France, and they've been literally trained by ISIS to carry out jihad. What could go wrong?
That's I tell you, I think that is an indication that we're going to see a whole lot more people like Marcia, and that they are going to be coming back to Germany, Sweden, UK, even the United States and Canada, and deciding, well, they're here, they can wage jihad here just as well.
And we've mentioned a ton of times before that you know, there are people who are sentenced to really big prison sentences because the governments know what they did and know if they killed people and so on. There are all these people who joined ISIS and the governments have no clue what they did, and so they only get charged with material support of a terrorist organization or something like that, and they get like 7 years, 8 years, or something like that. So those people are getting out. Those people are going to be getting out of prison.
Indeed.
And, what could go wrong?
What indeed. David, here's another story about immigration to the West, mass migration. This is a nude statue. I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody by showing it, but it's been out there in Dresden for 47 years in Germany, but it has just been removed. The mayor of Dresden, Stefan Kuhn, he has removed it because, as it happens, it was outside a center for the processing of migrants from Afghanistan and Syria. And so Stefan Kuhn said, we do not want to offend the new Germans.
Well, they should have put a burqa on it, left it there.
Indeed. You know, what is that statue in Denmark? Wasn't it in Denmark that somebody actually put a burqa on a nude statue and everybody was saying, oh, how Islamophobic, but Really, I mean, they could have left her there. In any case, the statue was carted off because, as is, I've often noted, the principle is always the same. In Muslim countries, you should conform your behavior to Islamic sensibilities. And in non Muslim countries, you should conform your behavior to Islamic sensibilities.
Yes. We they're the center of the universe, and we all revolve around them.
Yes, we just
That
live in
works.
it. It's their universe, we just live in it. And not for long if we don't say the Shahada. Meanwhile, let's see. I have lost my place here. Excuse me. I had a couple of them queued up. Oh, yeah. This is Saida Haq. There she is. Saida Haq. She is a designer for Nike. And you know what she designs, David? What do you think she designs?
Like head coverings or something.
Correct. She does sports hijabs, uh, Nike hijabs anyway, hijabs with the little thingy, the swoosh. And isn't that what they call it?
I don't know.
I don't know. Anyway, Saida Haq is very angry because France has just banned the abaya, the flowing Muslim robe and the head covering in schools. And she said the abaya ban in schools starts in September. So she's asking Muslim girls, send me a pic wearing it to schools because it's banned, you see. And she'll refund their order. She said, no, I'm sorry. And I might refund your order. And I thought, oh, that's clever. She gets everybody to buy her hijab and take it to school, wear it to school, send me a picture, and maybe I'll refund your order.
It's pretty nice.
And
Pretty sweet
meanwhile,
deal.
she's gonna get rich on this, and all these women are gonna think they're doing a great courageous thing, and they are. They're making Saida Haq rich. On the darker side of the France abaya ban, we have already had a Muslim father threaten to kill a school principal for enforcing the ban. And that, of course, is entirely to be expected given the nature of the case. Unfortunately, when you say that violence is acceptable under certain circumstances, you're just inviting it to be applied against you. And the Europeans are going to see more and more of this. It's the all-purpose solution, as you have noted in the past, is it not? When there's a problem, Muslims figure, all too many Muslims anyway, that violence is the answer.
Yeah. How long do you think France is going to stand its ground on this?
I don't think very long. Denmark has already caved and adopted a blasphemy law outlawing the burning of the Quran. Sweden's likely to follow soon. And then France will be probably third to drop all this and allow the full coverings.
And it's a weird situation because I would generally not like governments running around telling people what to wear and so on. But my goodness, you just like burned the country to the ground.
Indeed. Quite recently.
Yeah.
And so one would
And
think that
and it's built into their ideology. No, you do tell everyone what to wear. Okay, well if you're saying that governments do get to order people what to wear, then okay.
not infidel governments.
Yeah. Just us. We can tell you what to wear. You keep your mouth shut in return. It's always one way.
Always, always. And this is something somehow the infidels never seem to understand. Let's see. There is lots more. There was an interesting sidelight, actually. Not your ordinary honor killing in Germany, but a father and son confronted and stabbed a young man on the street in Germany because they thought that the young man had offended the honor of their daughter and sister. So instead of killing her, they stabbed this fellow, her boyfriend, on
That's
the
an
street.
That's an interesting twist. Normally
Maybe
they
they
go
were,
right. Normally they go right for the daughter,
yeah,
like right for the daughter. Ah, my daughter did what with some guy? Ah, she's dead.
maybe
Guys get a
they
free pass.
these guys are moderates, I
Yeah, they're
guess.
moderates. They kill the man instead of their daughter.
Yes. All right. Well, we are running out of time. There's always more jihad, unfortunately, but we hope to catch you next week, God willing. And in the meantime, be careful, be watchful, but don't worry. Trust in the Lord and manifest the difference between your faith and that of Islam by being loving and peaceful. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Till next time.